In the time of the Georgians and the Regency, Queen's Square was a public hangout spot. It was like a city square, a place where people would come to have refreshment, to think, to dream, to visit, to socialize, to engage in vice, to be seen and to see. As I'm sitting here in Queen's Square, I am imagining what it would have been like for Jane Austen, for the people of that time. If someone were to come and sit on the bench that I'm sitting at and just observe, most of what I'm seeing now, they would see. A trio of family members, two sitting on a bench, one standing, all observing what's going on around them. A businessman walking straight through the park, one hand in his pocket, one arm swinging, sure of himself and with important business to tend to. There's a man sitting shirtless with just a hoodie hanging off the top of his head, drinking alcohol from a very large bottle. There's another group of three men who have likely been meeting at this park for many decades, chatting, laughing, being generally obnoxious but enjoying the weather. There's a mother with a baby just sitting and watching the pigeons. Another woman with a dog walking quickly across the park as if she has somewhere she needs to be. A couple sitting on a bench, both engaged in their own pursuits. Today with phones, then maybe with a book or a newspaper. Across the park there's another woman like me, just sitting quietly, observing everything going on around her. And a group of young girls, dressed in their school uniforms, is sitting in a circle and talking and eating snacks. There's a man standing, looking at the obelisk in the middle of the park. Is he reading? Is he thinking? Much of this is like it has probably been for several centuries now, but the one thing that I'm really noticing that is different in this 21st century is the diversity. The schoolgirls sitting on the lawn are from all different cultural backgrounds. There are at least two couples here, with the man being from obvious European descent and the woman being from obvious Eastern Asian descent. The three family members around the bench are all Middle Eastern. There's a diversity in clothing styles, some in shorts and tank tops, some in long dresses, some in business suits, some in casual jeans and t-shirts. And the man with the bottle, he's sitting not 15 feet away from a couple who are clearly tourists and clearly have the finances to be here. I'm gonna guess that for most of history, there was just a certain kind of class and culture who would have been allowed to hang out at this park like we are today. I'm sure it could tell us a lot of really interesting stories. But I think that the story it's telling here today is probably the best one of all. All right, so that was a little look at Bath at Queen's Square. I wanted to talk to you guys about the things that I've read in the last probably week and a half. Stuff I read in England and then things that I've read since I got back. And then I'm gonna put some more footage of Bath at the end of this video, and then that will be it for the videos from Bath for this year. And next time I'll go into Winchester and show you some of the stuff I did at Winchester And then out at Austen and Chawton, which is where the Jane Austen's house and manor house are located. So there are still quite a few videos to come that will have some of the video from my trip on them. If you guys are interested in taking a trip like this, look in my description box for a link to sign up to get notifications, because here in just a couple of weeks I'm going to be announcing my Jane Austen literary tour of England in 2026, and we will be going to all of the places that you see here on the videos plus more. So if that sounds like something you might want to do, go ahead and get on that email list so you can get notified when I put out the registration. You're not actually signing up to go by getting on that email list. You're just getting the notifications so that you can read all the details when I get them out and register to come along with us if you would like to. All right, so I read 5 books between my week in England and then these few days since I have been home. They're small books. I've been so tired, but just not really being able to sleep very well. So I've just done a lot of just extra stuff, right? Housework, and got the kids ready to start school again because we haven't done any schooling for like 3 months. I'm a homeschooler and we have a super relaxed schedule, so got them going again. We started back yesterday, and anyway, it's just a lot going on and I've just been kind of dinging around. But I got a little bit of reading done and I'm kind of getting back in the groove of things. So the first thing that I read, this is a little booklet called Frederick and Elfrida by Jane Austen. She wrote like in her teenage years, and it's just a short story that I picked up at Waterstones in where was it Winchester? Yeah, I think it was Waterstones in Winchester. And it's just a funny little short story about it just kind of trails. It starts off being about Frederick and Elfrida, and it ends being about Frederick and Elfrida, but it kind of goes a few different directions. It is only like 17 pages long, so a short story. You can probably find it online, but Waterstones was selling these little booklets. I think that they have just kind of put out in England everything they could possibly find on Jane Austen to celebrate this year. Everywhere I went, there were flyers and advertisements for plays and musicals and talks and all kinds of things related to Jane everywhere. So everybody is making a really big deal about it, which is awesome, right? And so I think like Waterstones had this specific section for Jane Austen books and little pamphlets like this, just whatever they could get a hold of, right? They are publishing and putting it out. So that's pretty fun for big fans like us, right? But the one part of this story that just kind of cracked me up was her descriptions of Frederick and Elfrida. So Frederick and Elfrida are cousins, and they are described on the first page of this short story like this. Being both born in one day and both brought up at one school, it was not wonderful that they should look on each other with something more than bare politeness. They were exceedingly handsome and so much alike that it was not everyone who knew them apart. Nay, even their most intimate friends had nothing to distinguish them by but the shape of the face, the color of the eye, the length of the nose, and the difference of the complexion. It just kind of made me laugh, and they're, opposite genders and stuff. I don't know, I thought it was funny. But it's a funny little story, so you guys can look for Frederick and Elfrida if you haven't heard of that one yet. Next, I finished Arabella by Georgette Hare, and I know I'm in the minority. I'm so sorry, guys. But I didn't so much, I don't know. I didn't totally adore it. It is definitely a Pride and Prejudice retelling, down to just really obscure things like Lizzie walking around looking at statues, and I don't know, you just have to read it to get it, but there's a lot in here that's obviously copying Pride and Prejudice, and so that doesn't really bother me too much. I think what was really bugging me was the fact that it doesn't seem authentically Regency era. Now, apparently Georgette Hare is known to be like the expert in her day, I guess, on Regency stuff. She did a lot of research and had a big collection of like, you know, resources and that kind of thing. So I'm not doubting at all that she knew what she was talking about, but the way it was conveyed, like the feeling that I got from the dialogue, and I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but it just seemed much more Victorian than it did Regency. And I could be totally out there, right? Like, it's totally not even my culture. It was not my time period. I guess it really wasn't her time period either. But, you know, I could be completely wrong. But it just struck me strange. The overuse of slang was really getting on my nerves. She, I guess, wanted to, you know, show the funny slang way in which especially the men would talk. And that's all great, but it was so overdone. It was so much to the point that sometimes there were, you know, pieces of dialogue where several sentences were so full of slang you had no idea what they were talking about. So she put like a glossary at the back, but I feel like when I'm reading a fiction, like I don't want to be constantly turning back to the glossary to see what this word means, right? It probably should be able to be discerned within the context. In my opinion, I'm probably offending people, sorry. But yeah, I wasn't a fan. Now I will read some more. There are several more in this series, like with the decoration. Like, this isn't a series, but the published series that has the same sort of, you know, covers that match and stuff. So I do want to get those and read them. And I will keep this, and I will probably reread it again someday when I'm really old. I think that I didn't really care for the character of Arabella either. I think that her fans think that she's really, you know, cute, and, you know, her naivety makes her just adorable, and she's, you know, a sweet little social justice warrior. And to me, she just came across as too naive, just childish, and I don't think that people really actually would have put up with Arabella and her cutesy social justice stuff as much as this author would like us to believe. I really think she's kind of obnoxious and not quite believable, but I know I'm taking the fun out of it. I'm sorry. I didn't like the idea that it's only, you know, this man Beaumaris who can save the day, and I'm fine with guys saving the day, right? But his character was not the kind of hero that I admire. He was super arrogant. He was pushy. Another Goodreads viewer used the phrase romanticized paternalism to describe him. I'm like, yes, that is exactly it. It is a daddy sort of relationship, romanticized, where the woman is not strong, independent, mature at the same level, or supposed to be anyway, as the man, and it is kind of a paternal thing seen as good. I think, yeah, that really nailed it of what was bugging me here about this hero character, Beaumaris. She was kind of like a damsel in distress crying into his collar, and he's like, shut up, sweetheart, just drink your milk. And it just really seemed super Victorian to me. It's just kind of like a sensation novel, right? So this wasn't the strong, independently minded Lizzie figure or the surprisingly humble-hearted Darcy figure. I know that I'm not reading Pride and Prejudice, I get it, but she made so many connections, it's hard not to sort of expect that, I guess. And then to top it off, like, I felt like there was zero romantic tension. Like, some of the most emotional lines were just given really robotically. I think that also kind of speaks to her time and culture, the author's time and culture. But there was nothing here that sort of like stirred up any sort of emotion other than annoyance in me. So yeah, I gave it 1 star. I think I gave it 1 star on Goodreads, and then I felt bad I gave it 2 on Storygraph. But I will give Georgette Hare another try. I will. In fact, I did already order, I don't have it near me, but I did actually order one of hers in like a vintage hardback edition that I thought was really pretty. So I'll show you guys that when I do my book haul. So I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. I just kind of know what to expect now. All right, and the next step, I read Catherine or the Bower, and then this edition also includes The Beautiful Cassandra. Both are stories by Jane Austen. I had read The Beautiful Cassandra before. It's really funny. It's 12 chapters, but each chapter is like a sentence or a couple of sentences, so it's really only like 2 or 3 pages long, but it's a fun little story, and it's super funny. And then the Catherine story was a short story. It was okay, but it just didn't end like super hopefully. So I had read somewhere that it was unfinished. I don't think it's an unfinished story. I think it's a finished short story. It's part of her juvenilia, and it just, you know, kind of ended. She was making a social statement in it, and there's a very overbearing guardian in here that keeps the main character from being able to just go live her life, but it was kind of underwhelming, I think. One aspect of the story that did really relate to me, though, this main character, Kitty, she has a friend named Camilla, and all Camilla ever wants to do is just talk about just like fluffy stuff, right? Like if it was nowadays, she'd just be talking about going to the mall and getting a coffee and having her hair done, which is all really fun stuff. But when you're feeling like you're in an intellectual mood and you want to talk about really deep things, right? You want to analyze something and you want to like solve all the issues of the world and contemplate philosophical stuff, and then a person just wants to talk about like how much foam is on the top of their latte. Do lattes have foam? I don't know. I drink tea. It's kind of frustrating, right? And that's how this main character, Kitty, was getting. She's getting really frustrated with her friend Camilla because Camilla just wanted to talk about fashion, right? And Kitty wanted to talk about like politics and social issues, stuff like that. Next up is just a quick little read. See, I told you I read like really tiny little things, but this is a kind of a souvenir book that I got from Winchester Cathedral, Jane Austen and Winchester Cathedral. I initially wasn't gonna get it because when I saw it, I was just like, she in her living years doesn't have any recorded real connection to Winchester Cathedral as far as we know, and it's just the fact that she was buried there. You know, her funeral was there and she was buried there that really brought the connection. So I was just like, it's just like, you know, tourist trap souvenir stuff, and I'm just not gonna fall for that. But then I went in and they actually had a display that's a special display just for a short time, a letter that Jane wrote. It's actually a poem that she wrote about her friend Anne Lefroy, who had passed away a few years before on Jane's birthday. And so Jane, a few years later, was just, you know, contemplating her birthday and how, even though it's a great day, it always brings back memories of her friend Anne. And so she wrote a poem about Anne. And they had the actual poem on the paper, like the legit handwriting and everything. It was Jane's paper there at Winchester Cathedral on display, and they had some information about Anne Lefroy and just this whole cool setup for, you know, fans to come and see. And so after I did that, I was like, I need something to commemorate this special day that I got to see something rare. And so I went back in and bought the little booklet about Jane and Winchester Cathedral. And sure enough, yeah, there's not really anything in here that really connects herself to the cathedral other than her grave there. But it does talk about the things that, you know, Jane did, sort of. I don't know if I would say she did things in Winchester, but just, you know, her short time there. So for instance, she wrote a poem about St. Swithin's Day races, and so that's in here. And then there's some drawings, and there's a little note, I think that the letter that she wrote to her nephew while she was there just a couple of months before she passed away, where she's talking about how she's gaining strength. Somebody did a drawing of her standing at the window and this in the house that she ended up passing away in. This is like contemporary. It's like something that somebody has recently done, right? Like for this book probably. But I thought that was really pretty. But the one thing that I got really excited about when I was reading this is that they're going to put up a statue, and they may have already done it. I kept seeing advertisements for it, and it might have been done this past weekend. I can't remember, but they're going to put up this statue here. So next time go to Winchester Cathedral, we'll get to see this. And I just thought this was so pretty. I've seen several sculptures and, you know, depictions of Jane. I've seen all the same stuff you guys have seen as far as like artwork and stuff, but there's also a few different statues or sculptures that I have been able to see in England. And this one, I think, like, of course we don't know, but I love this one the best. I think I love her face and just, I don't know, I just love everything about this. That writing table is the table that she has in her home, in her like Jane Austen House Museum in Chawton. Like, obviously it's, you know, the sculpted one, like that's not the table, but it's a sculpture of that table, and just the way she's kind of lightly resting her hand on it. I just really love this a lot, and so I will be excited to see this sculpture in person next time I go. But anyway, yeah, this was a fun little souvenir read. And it was just £5. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll grab it. Then, lastly, I read King of the Golden River by John Ruskin. And this is the pick for my children's classic read-along that I've been doing this year. This was the June pick. And this has been on my shelf forever, not like on my TBR, but just on my family, you know, bookshelf. It was on my kids' reading list years ago, and I think only one of my kids ended up reading it, and he said that he liked it back in the day, but he was like 9 and, you know, also kind of people-pleasy. So I don't know, but I read it and I was just kind of like, I don't know, it was kind of underwhelming. It's just kind of your standard fairy tale. There's you know, there's a guy who lives with his evil brothers, and they are mean to him and treat him badly, whatever, and then through a series of events, they end up dying in yucky circumstances, and then the guy ends up living happily ever after, and it's all due to this little impy guy right here who is the King of the Golden River. So, I mean, I didn't love it. It kind of gave like Rumpelstiltskin vibes in a way, but I think it was just because of the little short guy. But then I read some about John Ruskin himself, and it's stuff that I already kind of knew just from other reading I'd done on him. And he's just not somebody that I probably really want to read anymore. He only wrote a couple of kids' books, I think, and then he wrote some adult stuff, but he was creepy. And he just has some creepy stuff. So I think that I'm probably going to donate that book and just kind of forget about John Ruskin, if that's okay. So yeah, that was my reading for the last week. I'm actually almost finished with another book, a nonfiction that I got at Winchester Cathedral, which I will share with you guys in the next wrap up. But for now, stick around and watch the footage that I'm about to share with you here. This is the different places that I went to in Bath and just some of the fun and amazing things there. There's also there's a portion where I had gone and toured the Bath Abbey Church there in Bath, and they had a display about Jane Austen, and so there's some of that on the video. And then also towards the end of it, there is a little bit from the Jane Austen Center in Bath. It will have the gift shop, a portion of the museum, not a lot, because they do charge you quite a bit to go in there, and they were really careful about like shutting the doors and curtains and things, so I didn't want to take advantage by videoing the entire place. But then after that, I went upstairs to the tea room, and so there is some footage from that as well. So I hope you guys enjoy that. And like I said, if you're interested in getting on the list for that tour information, make sure and check out the link in the description. Otherwise, guys, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye. Why are there no statues to gods or goddesses, especially to the goddess Minerva, in those little alcoves? I've always wondered that. Why is there no sort of, you know, face of the god there? I think Round Down, I think it's called. I've always wondered that as I've sat here time and time again, thinking about these buildings and history, and I really think it's because of what is over here to the left of it, and that would be Bath Abbey. Perhaps it is making a statement that on this same site that once worshipped the gods of this building and this feature here representing Rome and its anti-Christian ways. On that same site we have Bath Abbey, which does represent Christian ways. When I look up at Bath Abbey and see these different statues with their heads and hands missing, it makes me think about Henry VIII's cruelty during the dissolution of the monasteries. I haven't found any documentation of exactly how these statues were destroyed, but I know that many churches were wrecked in similar ways during that time. And it just makes me wonder, is this, decapitating, cutting off hands and sort of just destroying the face without completely destroying the figure? Is this speaking to the cruel way that a king would have wrecked his enemies? Right? Because disfigurement and crippling sometimes is worse than death. And maybe he knew that he couldn't actually destroy the sect of faith, but that he could make a statement of crippling and destroying kind of their image, if you will. Not at all saying that that is the history of this particular church, but just in general, these are some of the thoughts that I think when I look up at this church.
Could examine and treat patients, prescribe medicines. However, the MD after his name shows that he considered himself to be a doctor. In 1804, he was paid to treat Jane Austen's mother, who had fallen ill. Now, her regular declarations of ill health had led her family to consider her a hypochondriac. We don't know what the illness was at this time. However, Bowen's treatment was so successful that Jane's mother wrote a poem to celebrate her recovery. Dialogue between Death and Mrs. Austen. Says Death, I've been trying these 3 weeks or more to seize an old madam here at number 4. Yet I still try in vain, though she's turned of 80, to what is my ill success owe. I'll tell you, old fellow, if you cannot guess to what you're indebted for your ill success, to the prayers of my husband, whose love I possess, to the care of my daughters, whom heaven will bless, to the skill and attention of Bowen.
Move on from that road.
I've sent it to you.